The clockmaker's secret. Tobias was renowned for his remarkable skill. His clocks were not just devices for telling time, but exquisite works of art. Each one was crafted with such precision and care that people swore they could feel the heartbeat of time within them. Tobias' shop was filled with the soft rhythmic ticking of countless clocks, each with its own unique chime that marked the passage of hours and minutes. But despite his talent, Tobias carried a sorrow that weighed heavily on his soul, a sorrow tied to a tragic event that no one else knew of, not even his beloved granddaughter, Clara. One crisp autumn morning, Tobias unveiled his latest and greatest masterpiece, a towering clock that loomed over the town square. It was unlike any clock anyone had ever seen, with gleaming brass gears, intricate carvings of mythical creatures, and a pendulum that swung with a slow, mesmerizing rhythm. The face of the clock was adorned with strange symbols that no one in town could decipher, and its chimes were deep and resonant, sending shivers down the spine of anyone who heard them. Tobias had promised that this clock would be special, that it would offer the town a gift beyond measure. And it did. The clock had the power to turn back time by 1 hour every day. At first, this ability seemed like a blessing. People used it to fix minor mistakes, mending a broken vase, redoing a ruined meal, or taking back harsh words spoken in anger. They relived joyous moments, spending extra time with loved ones, or savoring a sunrise that felt too fleeting. The town thrived, and everyone praised Tobias for his miraculous creation. But Tobias' motives were not as pure as they seemed. He had not built the clock out of kindness or a desire to help others. He had built it to erase his own pain. Tobias was haunted by the memory of a terrible event, one that replayed in his mind like the relentless ticking of a clock. Each time the tower turned back time, it offered him a chance to push that memory further away, to hide it deeper within the folds of rewound minutes and lost hours. As the days turned into weeks, the townsfolk began to rely more and more on the clock's power. It was no longer just a convenience, it became an obsession. People turned back time for trivial reasons, winning arguments, catching missed opportunities, or simply gaining an extra hour of sleep. But as they abused the clock's gifts, strange things began to happen. The sky seemed to grow darker, the air thicker. The once vibrant town square started to feel cold and empty, even in the middle of the day. People began to forget things, small details at first, like what they had eaten for breakfast or where they had left their keys. But soon the forgetfulness grew. Arguments would be repeated, then erased, and repeated again, as if the town was stuck in a loop. Friends who had known each other for years would pass by without recognition. Lovers forgot the promises they had made. Parents began to misplace the names of their own children. The town's once cheerful atmosphere was replaced by a sense of unease, as if something dark was lurking just beneath the surface. Clara, who had always admired her grandfather's work, began to notice the changes in the town. She watched as her friends and neighbors became shadows of their former selves, their faces lined with worry, their eyes filled with confusion. She saw how her grandfather, the man she loved most in the world, seemed to be deteriorating as well. Tobias grew more withdrawn. his eyes hollow and distant, his hands shaking as he tinkered with the clock's mechanisms late into the night. Clara often found him staring at the clock tower from his shop window, a look of despair etched into his features. One night, Clara couldn't sleep. The second of the clock's chimes echoed in her mind, each tolling note sending a chill down her spine. She decided to investigate, hoping to find answers to the strange happenings in Everbrook. She crept into her grandfather's workshop, the air thick with the smell of oil and metal. She rifled through his notes, finding pages filled with complex diagrams and strange symbols that made no sense to her. Among the clutter, she found a faded photograph of a young woman, her face gentle and kind, her eyes bright with life. Clara's heart sank. She had never seen this woman before, but something about her seemed achingly familiar. Determined to learn the truth, Clara confronted Tobias the next morning. She showed him the photograph, and for a moment he seemed lost in a wave of memories that threatened to overwhelm him. Tears filled his eyes as he finally told her the truth. The woman in the photo was his wife, Clara's grandmother, who had died in a tragic accident many years ago, a day that Tobias had been unable to save her, no matter how many times he replayed it in his mind. "It was my fault," Tobias whispered, his voice breaking. "I wasn't there when she needed me. I thought if I could just turn back time, I could change it. But no matter what I did, no matter how many hours I rewound, I could never save her." Tobias had built the clock to turn back time in the hope of erasing that day, of somehow changing the past. But no matter how many hours he rewound, no matter how many times he tried to forget, the pain remained. And now his desperation was unraveling, time itself pulling the entire town into his endless loop of grief and regret. Clara knew what she had to do. She climbed the clock tower, her heart pounding as she ascended the spiraling stairs. The higher she climbed, the colder the air grew, as if the clock tower itself was resisting her. At the top, she found the clock's core, a glowing, pulsing mechanism that seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. It was beautiful and terrible all at once, a creation born of both genius and madness. Clara reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the clock's heart. It was warm, almost alive, and she could feel the weight of countless rewound hours pressing down on her. The clock resisted her touch, its gears grinding and screeching, the pendulum swinging wildly as if trying to throw her off. Clara gritted her teeth, her resolve unwavering. She realized that to set things right, she would have to confront her own fear, the fear of losing her grandfather, of letting go of the past. With a deep breath, Clara turned the mechanism forward, forcing the clock to resume its natural course. The gears groaned in protest, the pendulum swung erratically, and for a moment it felt as if time itself might shatter. Down below, the townsfolk watched in fear as the clock tower trembled, its chimes ringing out in discordant, airy tones. The sky above Everbrook swelled with dark clouds, lightning flashing as if the heavens themselves were rebelling against what was happening. People ran, covering their ears, their eyes wide with terror. But Clara stood firm, her hand steady on the clock's heart. She could feel it fighting against her, pushing back with all its might, but she held on, refusing to let go. Finally, with a resounding chime that echoed through the town like a thunderclap, the clock surrendered. The gears clicked into place, the pendulum slowed to a steady rhythm, and the unnatural glow of the mechanism faded. The air around Clara seemed to lighten, the oppressive weight lifting. She looked out over the town, watching as the fog of confusion lifted from the streets. People began to remember again, their lives slowly piecing themselves back together. Clara descended the tower, finding her grandfather waiting at the base. He looked at her with a mix of sorrow and relief, understanding that his creation had finally been undone. They stood together in silence, the ticking of the clock now just a gentle background hum, no longer the driving force of their lives. As the days passed, Everbrook slowly returned to normal. The townsfolk, now free from the clock's influence, began to rebuild their lives. But the memory of the clock tower and its terrible power lingered, a cautionary tale of the dangers of meddling with time. Tobias, filled with regret but also with a new-found sense of peace, vowed to spend his remaining days teaching Clara all he knew about clocks and time. And Clara, with a heart full of love and hope, promised to carry forward the lessons she had learned. That time, once lost, can never truly be reclaimed, and that some wounds must be faced rather than forgotten. The clock tower continued to stand tall in the center of Everbrook, its hands moving steadily forward, marking the passage of time as it always had. It no longer held the power to turn back the hours, but it served as a silent guardian of the town, a symbol of resilience, of memory, and of the courage it takes to move on from the past. And every day, as its bell tolled the hour, it reminded the townsfolk that while they could not change what had been, they could always shape what was yet to come. Thanks for watching this video. Comment, like and share. Bye bye.